everyone! So if you've seen my video on the man with the golden gun, you will know that this is the second part in 3 videos looking at the exam questions that you could possibly be asked for component 1 section A. So all of the exam questions that you see in front of you are from the sample assessment materials, which are up on the Educast website. I will link those down below in the description box. But as we said in the last video, you will obviously see that these questions are based for texts that are not film posters. So we have Quality Street here, we've got Pride, and what we do with these sample assessment materials and what you can do at home to help you with your revision is basically just change the questions to suit whatever it is that you want to practice. So because we're going to be looking at Spectre now, we've got explore how the film poster for Spectre uses the following elements of media language to create meanings. Explore how cultural context influences film posters. So here not only have I changed the kind of context, the focus of the question, but I've also changed the text that we're looking at as well. And then we're going to look at comparing the representation of gender in the Spectre film poster and also the film poster for Insurgent, which is the one that I've got up here. And we're going to have a look at answering these together. So let's get started. As we said before, you need to understand what you're being marked for. For question 1, A, B and C, then you get the same mark scheme for each part of the question. So it's this mark scheme here, and you'll see that there's very little difference between each of the bands. The main difference comes from these descriptors here, whether it's minimal, basic, satisfactory, good or excellent. And I always tell my classes, and it's something that I'll stand by and say to you guys as well, if you are only giving a basic level of detail, you are only going to get basic marks. So you've got to make sure that when you're answering the question, you use the space provided to work out how much you should be writing, you use the marks available to work out how much you should be writing, so that you stand the best chance of getting into the relevant band for you. So something will fill that red box in just a second, but to look at the bits that I've highlighted, as we said before, when we're exploring as part of our answer, we need to make sure we're looking at a range of different points rather than just focusing on one train of thought or one example. Media language means we're going to be looking at all of the things that are surrounding the poster, which is going to be the Spectre poster. As I said, we are going to be looking at images, which will include both the big red box for Daniel Craig, but also the background image, as you can see now, of the man in the mask. We're then going to be having a look at language, which, as we said in the previous video, is looking at written language and text on the page, which really, in this particular poster, boils down to the name Spectre and also that coming soon statement at the bottom of the page. And then the layout and design, which is the entirety of the image. So let me just get the, okay, let me, as you can see guys, really high quality production values today. Let me get the picture up as I've done now. What we're going to be doing is looking at this one first. As you can see in this answer, I feel like I have given an excellent detailed analysis of media language, and I think I've given a consistent focus on the connotations or the intended meanings of the specific language that I've picked out. See if you guys agree. Pop your comment in the comment section below if you do or if you don't, and I'm happy to get back to you with any questions that you might have. So, the film poster for Spectre is fairly minimal. There are a few images on the page. However, the focal image is the long shot of Daniel Craig as James Bond. It's clear that he's the protagonist because he's so clearly viewed, and he's also the centre of the frame. He's also viewed with high key lighting and is wearing a white tuxedo, both of which connote an element of purity and therefore represent that he is the hero of the film. Contrasting this is the background image of the man in the skeleton mask. This provides a high level of enigma and ambiguity as the demographic are unable to know who is behind the mask. However, the audience are able to understand that within the narrative, this figure is clearly an antagonist as they are surrounded by dark, low-key lighting and are almost transparent as if to imply a watermark or shadow which links to the title of the film. So, if you think I've given a detailed analysis and I've focused on those connotations, let me know in the comments box below, and you can also let me know if you disagree. What I do want you guys to do though is for language and also for layout and design, which we're going to have a look at in a minute, I want you guys to mark this for me and tell me where you think I would be. So for language, There is very little language on the poster for Spectre which adds to the overall enigma of the film's narrative and poster. However, the main language comes from the title of the film. The noun Spectre has connotations of mystery and could imply a sort of spirit or ghost, which provides anchorage to the shadowy figure in the background of the poster. Furthermore, the coming soon incentive in the credit block at the bottom of the page indicates that this was produced during production, but also acts as a tease for the audience to keep them interested in the narrative and to keep the hype going for the overall production release. Layout and design. The layout of the poster has been structured so that the page looks deliberately sparse and minimal. This is so that the overall sense of enigma and suspense with the product is heightened and raised. This would provide a social talking point for the audience who want to know what the film is about and what will happen to the protagonist in this instalment of the franchise. Furthermore, the decision to place the mid-shot of the shadowy figure behind Bond makes it appear as if he's looking at Bond and links to the idea that within the narrative, Bond's enemy will be much more closer than anybody realises. Now, for language, for images, and for layout and design, there was very, very little that I could talk about here, and it might well be that in your exam you are given a product which doesn't have a lot of obvious ideas on the page. So one of the things that you can talk about is the fact that it is deliberately sparse, because that decision will have been made for a reason. It might mean that your answer is a little bit shorter, so obviously these answers are shorter than the ones I did for the man with the golden gun, but have a look at the mark scheme that I've put up earlier and see if you still agree that I've done everything that I need to tick that top box. If not, comment down below, or if you think so, give me that thumbs up button and like this video so that I know you guys are watching along. Okay, 2A then. Again, we need to be thinking broad, because the main part of the question here is explaining how cultural context influences posters. Obviously, in this instance, we're not referring to the man with the golden gun, which suggests to me that I probably shouldn't have Netflix on in the background while I'm making these videos, but we are going to be looking at cultural context, and we're going to be focusing on Spectre as our evidence only. So making our work really broad and just bringing in Spectre to back up our points. So how does cultural context influence film posters then? Well, obviously cultural practices are going to play a large part here, specifically the Day of the Dead, which we can see through that shadowy figure wearing the mask. We've also got the presentation of the protagonists as well, in terms of sort of who we have as our hero and that sort of thing. And we could argue and bring into that the controversy surrounding Bond and who should replace him, given that we are now in a more multicultural society, but dealing with a text that was very, very much a product of its time. So our mark scheme, as we said previously in the previous video, very, very similar to question 1A, B and C, the only difference being those descriptors, whether it's basic, satisfactory, good or excellent. And there is nothing to stop you, no matter what grade you are predicted, what your target grade is. It really, really doesn't stop you from getting any mark on this mark scheme that you want. You just have to put your mind to it and decide what you want out of media and how far you are willing to work to get it. Let's have a look at how we answer this then. So, the one way that cultural context influences film posters depends on where the films are set. So in order for films to appear more realistic in a modern age, practices that actually happen within the setting are more likely to be made a feature of the film and its marketing. In the film poster for Spectre, this can be seen through the shadowy figure in the background, who is a clear representation of imagery conventional to Mexico and the Day of the Dead celebrations. This provides, in a way, a level of synergy for the production. So in Spectre, the celebration provided an iconic opening to the film, where the production itself raised the profile of the celebration to an extent where that parade featured in the show now happens yearly. Other ways that cultural context influences film posters is through the representations of characters. Recently, Bond has faced some criticism and controversy over who will replace Daniel Craig in the role. Many think it's time to reflect the culture within the UK by having a woman or someone of colour play the protagonist. However, the franchise is based on novels by Ian Fleming. The representation of Bond as a white upper-class man, as seen in the poster such as Spectre, is true to the original stories and reflective of culture at the time they were written. As you can see in this answer, I've gone really broad and I've only used Spectre to back up the points that I'm saying. And that's the best way of hitting those 2 points, giving that excellent, detailed accurate knowledge of the context that's influencing the product, and making highly appropriate references to the product to support your points. Again, if you disagree with the mark I've given myself, if you think, no, you're not a grade 5 or a band 5 here, then comment down below. And if you agree, give me a thumbs up and let me know that you're still watching along. All right, the big question then, the one that you have to nail in order to get a decent mark in media and in your exams. Let's have a look at how we go about answering this. Again, we're comparing. We've got to consider similarities and differences, and we can see those in those bullet points below. We've got to think about the methods that these producers are making, and our overall focus is gender in both Spectre and Insurgent. Remember, you have to mention similarities and differences to get a good stab at full marks here. You have to mention both film posters, otherwise you are limited severely on the mark that you can be given. And as we said before, because it's a 25 mark question, I would do a plan. It doesn't need to be massive. You'll see that I've only got 4 very brief points here, but you do need something to help you. And I would also be highlighting the keywords of the question so you have a visual focus. If you get lost, if you lose your train of thought, you have a visual focus on what you are being asked to do. So, similarities then. Similar character tropes within the genre. A sort of difference here is the equality within the genders. Now, I really think that the similarities and differences basically boil down to these. So I am going to end up writing more detailed paragraphs on similarities and differences with these as my main focuses. And obviously, within our exams, we're not all going to be able to write down 4 or 5 points for a plan. Some of us might be struggling, and so I want to show you how you can write a decent answer with just 2 ideas on your plan. Now, we did say that mark scheme is more detailed. There's more things that we need to do, but again, it boils down to those key words: minimal, basic, satisfactory, good, or excellent. Minimal detail means minimal marks. Something for us to bear in mind. You can also use the marks available. So 25 marks is obviously going to be larger than the answers we've done for our 5 marks. And you can use the space that you are given to help guide how much you should be writing, because each of these questions will have its own space for your answer. And that's what we can be using here to help us. So, representation. Ultimately, the presentation of gender within the posters has a resounding similarity in that Bond and 4 are presented in very similar ways. Within the Spectre film poster, the protagonist, Bond, is presented centrally within the frame. His body language is closed, suggesting a level of strength, and his stance, with a slight low angle, shows his dominance with the narrative and over the demographic viewing the poster. Similarly, 4 in Insurgent is presented as a dominant character. The long angle shot combined with the dress codes help to emphasise his tense muscles in his arm, which are a physical representation of his strength. The gun that he's holding, another similarity to Bond, points down towards the audience, showing his dominance within the narrative, which also provides a link between the genre. However, there is a clear difference within the way that Insurgent presents gender, in that Triss provides a female representation within the action genre. Despite the fact that her hair is styled to look more masculine, her dress codes appear more feminine, while fitting into the action genre. Furthermore, the fact that the 2 characters are back-to-back in the poster emphasise that there is a high level of equality between the 2 genders, as the centre point on the poster comes from both characters. This is unusual for the action genre and may be representative of the fact that the source material for Insurgent is a far more modern novel than the original Ian Fleming books, and that Spectre is based on. This may be one of the reasons why, within the Bond poster showed, there are no women featured alongside or around him. This reflects the franchise conventions whereby women act as a prize for Bond to win over, in the case of Moneypenny, a helper to get him achieve his goals. To conclude, the differences within gender are more obvious between the 2 posters, but they have to be considered within the context of the films. There's a vast difference in the times that the source materials reflect, which may be why the gender representation is different and shows an evolving genre and audience. Now, I think here that I have given that excellent detailed analysis. I think I've given an excellent and detailed comparison, and I think I've given well-reasoned judgments in that paragraph at the bottom. It's not as long as the one I did for the man with the golden gun, but hopefully you can see how you can still hit the mark scheme without necessarily writing reams and reams and reams. One thing I do want to pick out is the fact that obviously I've got knowledge of Insurgent. I know who the characters are. I know when it was produced. But you don't need that to make the same points. Where I've mentioned 4, you could just refer to him as the male character in Insurgent. Where I've talked about how Insurgent is based on something that's more modern, again, you don't have to know that it's based on a modern text. You can see from the posters that Insurgent, generally speaking, appears to be more modern than Spectre. If you disagree, if you think I deserve a different mark, pop a comment in the comment section below. If you have any questions or concerns about this, again, pop that comment in the comment section below. I do see every single comment, and generally I do respond to every single one, even if it's just to like what you have said. So don't be afraid of asking me questions. Okay, so here are our key terms for today then. We've got quite a few here that I've used throughout my answer. What you can do is to go through your own answers and highlight the ones you're using so you know which ones to focus on next. You can also write your answers yourself and then see which of the key terms you could fit in yourself. If you haven't already, please subscribe, hit that button down below. You get a shout out every time you subscribe, and you do need to let me know occasionally that you are subscribed, because if your subscriptions aren't visible, I won't know. Also, feel free to pop comments, questions, suggestions in the box down at the bottom, and I'll do my best to get back to every single one of you. I will see you later on for the